Hello and an exceedingly warm welcome back to the channel. Look at this, a Triang Hornby R.758 Hymek from the late 1960s making its way around the Super 4 vintage layout, and it's going at a nice sort of steady freight speed with some Triang and Wren wagons. And yes, this picture that shows you we should have got about 0.26, 0.27 of an amp being drawn, and this is a standard Triang power bogie. Now it hasn't been run for a little while, that reading may drop a bit, but it's a good benchmark. So with the same rake of wagons, when I fit our reconditioned bogie and talking about it, there it is sitting on the upward main line. That's going in that Hymek body in a bit, and we're going to do some direct comparisons, noise, sort of pulling power, smoothness, speed and current consumption. So yeah, we got quite a nice sort of mid to, yeah, not mid to slow perhaps freight speed there, and I think that for an old model 0.26, 27 of an amp isn't too bad. Okay, well I think we're going to just run this bogie as is. I'm going to put some power on and move it away. Now that is quiet and it's running really smoothly. I had a couple of people mention to me, you know, they were wondering if I'd got to balance this armature. Well, it's got the same amount of wire on each coil. And it's spanned quite nicely in the bearings. It didn't seem to have a heavy point. That's not very technical, I know, when it comes to balancing, but I don't think this is much out of balance. Now I do have a little device for balancing aeroplane propellers, so I guess I could have popped it in that, but I just think we'll know if it's terribly out of balance the way it runs. And right now it's smooth and powerful, and check this out, about 0.1617 of an amp as it goes around by itself. So I wonder whether this is going to be a higher current draw or a lower current draw than the Hymek we're running at the moment once I put it in this body shell. So the specs of the armature that I rewound, so much information out there. Some people say 40 SWG wire, some say 39 or even 38. I think they changed the thickness of the wire on Triang armatures during the production life of these sort of power bogies and XO4s and XO3s. But I measured it as 40 SWG and 8 meters on each pole, so that's what's gone back on. Now we're going to go over to the bench in a minute and just take a quick look at the power bogie, just how I finished it off. I had a little bit of inspiration when it came to coating the windings, and that's worked well. So I think what we'll do is take a quick look how I got this running the way it is running, and then possibly get it swapped over into this locomotive chassis and then back on the layout for some comparisons. Right, let's get over to the workbench. Okay, well look, here's the little power bogie, and let's just see if I can show you in the palm of my hand. You can see the brushes in there nice and square. Take a look at that clip that holds the bearing in. I substituted it with a spare of mine, but I've just made a brass one so I could put my spare back in the spare box. So we've made a new clip. Now underneath there was a traction magnet missing. Now that's the original, that end. You can see the shiny end of that. That's an adapted one. That's from a Class 31 chassis I had knocking around, and my goodness, they're made of hard material. That took quite some grinding to get it to fit, but it's in there, and it's providing a little bit of magnetism to those wheels. So we've constructed our own bearing clip, modified a scrap magnet to fit, and the chassis is looking good. And I've also just resoldered this suppressor. Now, I don't know whether you can see down in there the windings. Now, how did I varnish those? Well, I'll tell you, you can't believe it really. Let me put that down. In the refrigerator at home, I found this bottle, and you can see that it says top coat. It is indeed a lady's nail varnish, a clear nail varnish, but it's great stuff. It's and of course it's got an applicator, it's got a little brush. So I just spent a little while using this, which dries so quickly, on the windings, and it's really done a great job. I've just done the ends and just down the sides, and a little bit of this varnish, this top coat clear varnish. It's gone on and it's set beautifully. Those windings aren't going anywhere, so I'm able to operate this now at top speed. So let's just pop that down, because here, look at this. This is the chassis of the loco we were just running. You can see my modification there just to give us an extra pickup. So I'm just going to swap them over. So what I need to do is just get my soldering iron on and just unsolder these two wires, and then I'll just pop the rebuilt Bogie in, and we'll see how it runs and compare the speed, the power, the noise level and the current draw. Okay, I'll just get this swapped over and then we'll be back on the layout. Okay, well, I've got these swapped over now. So the rewound armature, you can see the brass bearing clip at the back of that. That's all in there, soldered on the extra pickups. And let's just take a quick look at this. This is an original Triang one, and very similar. Maybe you can just see the armature down there. Slightly better condition worm wheels, but all in all, very, very similar, the rebuilt item. One thing I forgot to say is this brass contact was missing from the Bogie supplied, so I just soldered on a little terminal of my own. But anyway, this is ready to go on the layout now. So I want to get the body shell on. Here it is. And then we're going to test it out, so we'll get a really true idea how this rewound armature performs. Okay, well look, the body shell's on, and I've got it coupled to that little rake of wagons, so we're ready now to do our comparisons. So what I want to do is see if I can get a nice slow move away. So I'm reaching down to the controller, just feeding the power in gently. Look at that. Well, that was every bit as good as the original low hours Triang Bogie I've taken out. And I have got it set to quite a low speed. And it's running super smooth, no untoward noises. Current consumption seems good, 0.22 of an amp, so that's a little bit of a reduction on the original one. And in fact, it's dropped down now to 0.18. So this is probably an indication that the motor is drawing a little bit less, a little bit more efficient. A couple of people have said to me about rewinding armatures. Well, it's certainly something you wouldn't do for financial reward. There's many professionals out there offering guaranteed items for very, very small amounts of money. And indeed, I saw some new old stock. I think it was from Peter's Spares or another supplier of this particular type of armature. New old stock for under £10. So when you rewind one of these, it's got to be for fun. Certainly not for financial remuneration. But that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just doing different jobs with the railways, whether you want to make scenery or buildings, or just do more mechanical work, overhauling the bogies or the motors, or modifying items that you've got to make them more fun or run better. All these things are great sort of facets of model railways. And I've had great fun rewinding this Armature. I mean, no doubt I'll do another in the future. It's not going to be something I do every month. But I would like to do either a Wren or a Hornby 00 item at some point. And I guess we'll probably come to that at some time during the videos I make for the channel, because I've got a couple of non-runners. And I think possibly a Wren Armature or a Hornby 001 might be a little bit easier. Well, look at that. That's going beautifully, isn't it? So Steve, I hope you're watching this. That's your bogie there, and it will be coming back to you. And let's put a bit more power on. And when you get it back, Steve, I hope that it runs nicely on your rails. It seems to be going quite nicely here. I'll probably give it a little bit of running, try and bed the brushes in a bit. The brushes that came with this motor, one seemed to be absolutely brand new, and one was about 50 to 60% worn, but I flattened it off. It's got many hours in it. Certainly doesn't need replacing yet. And they're bedding in, and I guess once they're bedded in, it'll run even better. Yeah, well, that's settled now at about 0.19, 0.2 of an amp. I mean, I will perhaps show you on this, but it does, this camera, it does flicker a bit, the reading, but hopefully you can see that the bottom reading is going sort of between well, it's went down to 1.7 then, but it's about 0.2 of an amp. So we do have a slightly more efficient motor, but it's got plenty of power. And now that nail varnish is set, shall we do a little bit of faster running? So we've wound it up now, and it sounds just like a Triang locomotive should. It is drawing a bit more current at this high speed. If I just come back to the meter, 0.23, but it's still well within tolerance. I guess the remagnetizing would have helped. Maybe if I remagnetize my original Triang item, the current might come down a little bit, but I don't tend to remagnetize them unless they really need it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this series of videos right from the start, where we discovered the armature was faulty, all the way through winding it, repairing the bogie, and now fully recommissioned as a running loco. I've had great fun doing this. And once again, thanks for all the excellent comments, the information, the help along the way. It's all much appreciated. Okay, well, I'm going to leave you with this Hymek. I'm going to slow it down a little bit now, because as much as I like to see it tearing round, I do quite enjoy the slower speed running. So we'll just finish off with a little bit of slow speed running. And until the next video, I'll say goodbye.